Hello everyone, and welcome to the 269th episode of Analyzing Evil, featuring Aaron Stampler from Primal Fear. An oft-requested character, Aaron Stampler and the film he's featured in are quite intriguing, but in order to get the full picture of Aaron, his evil, and some of the other evils present in this film, we're also going to take a look at the information we receive in the novel this film was adapted from. However, I want to let you know that unfortunately this video will not contain any clips from the film, as Paramount has been without a doubt my worst enemy when it comes to copyright claims and takedowns over the course of this channel's history, as you might have heard me talk about in other videos. That being said, Patreon doesn't restrict what I do at all, so if you'd like to see this video with clips from the film included, consider signing up to become a patron to get uncensored, ad-free, and early access videos for just $2 a month. But if you're a cinema buff like I know you are, then you definitely need to consider checking out Mubi. Mubi is a curated streaming service that's worked hard to elevate and promote great cinematic works from all around the world. With films hand-selected by their team of curators, Mubi is the definitive place to find all kinds of wonderful works from iconic directors to emerging auteurs, all of which you can easily have right at your fingertips. Mubi truly does have something for everybody, with films like Raging Bull, Monster, Licorice Pizza, Sentimental Value, and many more now showing that are sure to please seasoned cinephiles and budding ones alike. And that's even more so the case for fans of this channel, as Mubi features many of the films that I've made videos on over the years, including the likes of The Babadook, Oldboy, The Substance, and countless others. So if you want access to all the greats the film world has to offer, head over to mubi.com/thevioli to try Mubi for free for 30 days. You heard that right. An entire month's worth of free films is instantly available to you over on mubi.com/thevioli or by clicking the link in the description. And I have a feeling once you experience all that Mubi has to offer, it may very well become your go-to platform for all things cinema. Thank you, Mubi, for sponsoring this video. Now without further ado, let's begin. Primal fear. The instinctive fear of something that manifests from the depths of our subconscious when confronted with the many terrors mankind has had to face over the course of its evolution. The dark, isolation, predators, heights, things that harbor danger, are dangerous, or promise danger should one take a step too far, that fill us with all sorts of negative emotions so we can recognize these dangers for what they are. However, though most of us experience these fears at some point in our lives to varying degrees, they affect each of us differently, and for Aaron Stampler, his most primal of fears was his fear of the whole. In the film, we learn that Aaron was born and raised in a small town in Kentucky called Creekside, that his mother was dead by the time he was 12, and that his father was not a nice man. While this small amount of information allows us to make some inferences about Aaron's background when factoring in different aspects of his character, the novel actually provides much more background info for Aaron that lines up quite well with any theories I may have been able to concoct with only the info we receive in the film. It's here that we learn that Creekside, though the small town it was in the film, was also something much more: a company town. A company town is a town that's either built or bought by a company that has a business interest in the area, providing for the many workers it either hires or moves there all the necessary means for survival by building and operating homes, schools, hospitals, stores, etc., all of which only further enriches the company and allows them to have a veritable stranglehold over the denizens of any town they own. In this case, Creekside was owned by an unknown mining company that operated a coal mine in the area. An observation that Martin Vale's assistant Goodman makes about the town when he arrives there to investigate Aaron's background paints a fantastic picture for us. Goodman stopped the car at the top of the hill, got out, and looked around. Ahead of him, the road dropped sharply down between pine-laden walls that defined a narrow valley. Cramped into its confined floor was a single street half a mile long bordered on one side by a dark, thundering stream and a narrow-gauge railroad track, and on the other by the natural wall of the steep ravine. Houses and stores lined the bleak roadway. Company stores and company shanties, 60 or 70 aged frame houses, Goodman estimated, before the valley curved and the settlement followed along. Years of black dust had obliterated paint and trim, and yet there was about the small settlement a look of neatness, a reflection of pride, and something else. At first, he couldn't put his finger on it. Then he realized the place seemed somehow out of place in time. Yeah, that was it. No television aerials, no neon, no billboards. It was as if he had driven over the crest of the hill into another century. There was a kind of sad yet serene beauty here. It was hard to imagine that under these green rolling hills and deep ravines, coal mines deep dip into the earth, manufacturing deadly gases and black lung dust. Truly heaven and hell, thought Goodman, and he was abruptly swept back in time for a moment to Gary, Indiana, 25 years ago. A place different from this place in size and accent, and yet strangely like it. Dominated by smokestacks instead of hills, its colors black and gray instead of green, Gary nevertheless had the same grim, redundant sense about it. In Gary, they boiled steel in giant furnaces. Here, they dug coal from pits in the earth. In both places, danger was a persistent partner. Goodman's father had died under a scalding cauldron of molten steel, broken, body and spirit, by years of physical punishment. He just couldn't move fast enough. When his father died, Goodman, then 9, and his mother moved to the city. They had never owned anything. Everything belonged to the company. What pride they had left behind, for it was an emotion manufactured by the company and manifested by bowling teams and football games, high school bands, and 4th of July picnics. So Goodman knew what to expect. Gaunt, suspicious of strangers, the people would be leather hard from a lifetime of fighting weather, poverty, and geography. They would be simple people, their vision confined by mountains, fog, and fear of the outside, their dreams trapped in airless, lightless, anthracite tombs, their tenuous job security in itself a death sentence. Cave-ins, explosions, disease, and climate were the 4 horsemen of their existence, and yet he knew they would be ferociously patriotic, God-fearing, loyal people, their faith nurtured in the fundamentalist church, their fervor in the flag, their loyalty to a company that would exploit them to their graves, salt of the earth. This is the world Aaron Stampler was born into, and it was the world that contained that primal fear of his, the great gaping maw that served as the portal to the fortune and misfortune of nearly every man, woman, and child in Creekside. The hole, the entrance to the coal mine that had terrified Aaron ever since he was old enough to know what it was. Aaron had nightmares of the hole, of creatures and demons awaiting to drag him to hell, both while asleep and awake. The dark and dismal place that everyone around him claimed was the birthright of every man born in Creekside. His father and brother worked it, and his father and his brothers before him, and so it would be that one day Aaron would have to descend into those pits to toil in the same grueling manner that the men of his family had for generations. And on his 9th birthday, a day which no child should fear, Aaron was finally taken down to the hole to survey his future. There were no demons and no monsters there, but as far as Aaron was concerned, what he encountered was worse, a place with darkness so thick that the lamplights he and the men with him wore were made all but useless, a place where the striking sounds of dynamite exploding was the only temporary relief from the shroud that surrounded him, and a place where the only life to be found lay in the barely visible eyes and mouths of the solemn men who toiled there in silence and misery. Such a place wears on the soul of any person, but for a 9-year-old boy to experience such hardship is something else entirely, a traumatizing experience that only compounded the fear that already existed within his mind. And when Aaron's fear continued to consume him, and he declared his refusal to ever go back down there to his father, in his rage, his father began to mercilessly beat him whenever the mood would strike him, leaving bloody welts across his back from the lashings he would receive. His mother, who was as company-minded as his father, was no help here, and to add further pain to his already painful existence, she was an illiterate woman who was also a devout Christian, and one who began to show increasing signs of paranoid schizophrenia as she aged. A woman who reveled in the sermons of one Reverend Shackles, a man consumed with fire and brimstone, who instilled within Aaron from the tender age of 7 that he was doomed to go to hell if he even stepped a hair out of line. So a miserable world filled with a constant and oppressive miasma of hardship was the home of Aaron Stampler, an existence that would traumatize and scar anyone unfortunate enough to experience it, with the hole, the monument to all that this place was and will ever be, that served as the nexus of these horrors, standing as something altogether more, for the hole wasn't just a dark chasm filled with danger and the unknown, but a death sentence, a guaranteed life of backbreaking menial work for anyone who agreed to dwell therein, a life of mundanity, of servitude, and of pain that allowed for precious little freedom, growth, or opportunity to expand one's mind. And that, for Aaron, was one of the worst things about Creekside, as Aaron Stampler was a genius. Everyone around him, from his family, to his peers, to his elders, recognized the brilliance within Aaron, a boy who could consume books as quickly as he got his hands on them, who dreamed of bigger things than what the small town of Creekside could offer him. This intelligence, along with being something that caused Aaron to desire more than the lot he'd been given in life, was also another source of pain for him. For being different from his peers, Aaron ended up isolated from the rest of the people his age, marking his existence as that of an abused and lonely boy who held great fear of what his life seemed to have in store for him, an existence that was only alleviated by his teacher, Miss Rebecca, who was the only person who encouraged his studies, and who also ended up in a sexual relationship with Aaron at the age of 14, providing further trauma and damage to an already thoroughly abused soul. For some, all of these things would have led to them living a life dominated by an ever-present melancholy, but for others like Aaron, such an existence fills them with other more harmful things, namely rage, hatred, and a complete lack of empathy for their fellow man. For experiencing these things in one's youth are the keys to unlocking a mental health disorder most terrible, the dreaded antisocial personality disorder, the disorder that gives people such wonderful labels as psychopath and sociopath. And Aaron was without a doubt a psychopath. Sometime after Aaron had been taken into the hole and began receiving beatings from his father, Aaron's heart and mind became hardened against the world, against his fellow man, and the efforts they made to tie him down and dictate his existence. And so to relieve himself of these burdens, he chose to act, first murdering the Reverend Shackles one day by pushing him over the edge of a gorge, and then later in his teenage years murdering his brother and his lover, who Aaron had a crush on, by stuffing towels into the cracks of the windows of the car they were making love in one day during winter, causing them both to suffocate from carbon monoxide poisoning. Though these are the only concrete murders Aaron admits to, according to him, there were many more who suffered his wrath aside from these three, showing us that though Aaron once feared the demons that might lay in the dark depths of that creekside coal mine, that the real demons are the ones who emerge from its depths. Bishop Richard once told me hell is in your own mind, and indeed, hell is what was created in the mind of Aaron Stampler, a hell that he would take with him wherever he went, and one that he would drag so many deserving and undeserving souls alike into. Now, though there's still some differences between the film and novel as far as Aaron's character goes, aside from the background information I just provided, their characters do stay relatively the same. So from this point on, everything I'm going to say about Aaron will be derived from the film, but it will still be applicable to the book version of his character, though I will be pulling a few other details from the book as we go along. Now, at the start of this film, we quickly bear witness to a heinous crime that's about as sickeningly brutal as a crime can get, the murder of Archbishop Rushman, who, between the book and the film, had his thumb, forefinger, eyes, and genitals cut off, his stomach painted with the number 666, the Dewey Decimal designation B32.156 carved into his chest, and between 36 and 78 stab wounds strewn throughout his body. This murder was quickly discovered to have one very likely suspect, Aaron Stampler, who was found cowering in the confessional in the book, and who police apprehended after a long chase in the film. When we first meet Aaron, he seems to be quite harmless, a naive country bumpkin who's clueless, reserved, and overall quite amiable. But as you all know well enough after watching this film and hearing the background information about Aaron I provided for you, that Aaron is far from being the aimless and innocent young man he seemed to have been initially. And once you know the twist here, what he is becomes readily apparent, a manipulative, vindictive, and merciless man with a gargantuan intellect, an intellect that allowed him to fool dozens of people into believing that he was a poor and innocent soul suffering from the oppression of a malevolent alter ego, when in reality, there is no alter ego, only the villain that is Aaron Stampler, one who has long since shed the persona of the innocent country boy that he once was, one who now only uses that simplicity as a mask to further his nefarious aims. Now, something else you all likely know is that Aaron didn't just murder Bishop Rushman for no reason. He did so as retaliation for the abuse Rushman doled out to Aaron, his friends, and his supposed girlfriend Linda. And in the novel, Rushman's abuse is far more involved, as he seems to have been an active participant during the sessions he had with these minors, rather than just the director who likely used these tapes to purge himself of the devil later on. The thing is though, if Aaron was never some naive boy, then it's reasonable to assume that he was a willing participant in the depravity of Rushman. So why then did he murder him in such a heinous way? Well, it could have been out of disgust, or for revenge, but honestly, I'm more inclined to believe he did it simply because he could, pushing the limits of his experience in life, so he might create an interesting and entertaining situation for himself, one that would not only be fun in the moment, during the murder, but afterwards as he attempted to evade the law using this DID plan he's concocted. Regardless, he couldn't have picked a better target to kill here, as not only was Rushman's own guilt a tool he could use to aid in his evasion of the law, but Rushman also had ties to a conspiracy that saw the upper echelons of Chicago attempting to force out disenfranchised people in order to profit via the construction of waterfront condos. What all of this does is highlight for us that every single thing that Aaron has done since awakening the demon inside him back in Creekside has all been one big game. A game where the only player is one young man with an intricate mind that's been woven with terror, misery, and brutality, who seeks to push the limits of what he knows and what he can do. A predator in the truest sense of the word, who has become, in a way, more animal than human. In truth, Aaron Stampler, or Roy, or whatever you want to call him, is as evil as they come. And while the novel is fantastic for its ability to convey that evil to us in an intricate and interesting way, there's no doubt that the real reason Aaron has solidified himself as such a tantalizing villain is because of the performance of Edward Norton, who really knocked both his dual portrayal of Aaron and Roy here out of the park. He plays the naive, foolish, and shy Aaron so excellently that his equally excellent portrayal of the brash, crude, and violent Roy comes as a shock. And while this film stands up well enough on its own, it's Norton who made it as memorable as it's become, a performance that even makes the twist ending that the majority of people watching this film likely saw coming great, despite that fact. After Roy was revealed, I knew there were only two options here, that either he was faking it or he was telling the truth. But the beauty of Edward Norton's performance is that I would have been completely satisfied with either outcome. If Aaron truly did suffer from DID, then his story would have been fantastic, and when it turned out that he wasn't, it was equally as fantastic. That, in my mind, is the difference between a good twist ending that you see coming and a bad one. Obviously, the best twist endings are the ones you don't see coming, but when you do, it's enough that you're content with how the story played out and don't regret the ride to that previously foretold endpoint. All in all, Primal Fear, both the book and the novel, contain some complex themes about morality and the laws that claim to represent both, showing us a world filled with corruption, perversion, and manufactured hardship that transformed a young man into a monster who was as monstrous as the man that he savaged so brutally in this story, albeit in a much different way. And at the end, who knows who the real Aaron Stampler truly was? Was he all Roy, part Aaron, or something else entirely? Perhaps not even Aaron himself knew the truth. For as the Scarlet Letter tells us, no man, for any considerable period, can wear one face to himself and another to the multitude without finally getting bewildered as to which may be the true. And so long as a man dares to tread upon such a multifaceted path, he will always be lost. Lost to himself, lost to the world, and ultimately lost to evil. Thank you all for tuning in to this episode of Analyzing Evil, and I hope you've enjoyed. What are your thoughts on Aaron Stampler? Did I miss anything? Let me know down below and leave a suggestion for a villain you'd like to see featured while you're at it. If you like this video, hit that thumbs up button and make sure to subscribe if you haven't already. A big thank you to all of my subscribers, my patrons, anyone who's decided to honor me with a super thank, and especially our Dark Lord patrons, Elijah Kai VA, Mr. Awesome, Louis Dogstater, Just Keeping It Real, Lachlan, Atris Rain, Seltsopa, Him Downstairs, Off Mega, Beep Boop, and Lorenzo Antonino. And a most vile thank you to those whose names you're seeing on screen now. Join the channel's Discord server and subreddit to interact with myself and the community, and follow me on the social media platforms listed below to keep up with the channel. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll be seeing you soon.